bought a pair of Anker Soundcore Motion Plus speakers. Kind of redefines what you expect at the £90-ish price level, depending on what kind of deal you get. They certainly seem to be doing deals at the moment. I think the advertised price is 99. You certainly get 10 quid off, and same thing in dollars, I understand. Now, I'm saying it redefines what you should expect at this price level, because the nearest speakers I could compare it to are £150 speakers. The Charge 4, the Denon, a lot of others, but the others that I'm thinking of are around £150. The cheaper ones, like the Flip 4, sound silly against this speaker. So it is stonking value, and it's even better stonking value when you buy them as a pair. I want this video to be basically an overview, getting to know the speaker, and a lot of this speaker is about the app and the sound and the EQ settings. It's a huge bit actually of this speaker, because custom settings make a huge difference to the speaker. So I want to go over my thoughts on the app, my thoughts on the EQ settings, and the differences between them. However, I know a lot of people are going to say, well, we just want to hear the speaker. So for all those people who just want to hear the speaker and a quick comparison, a quick teaser, and I have to say I'm going to be doing other videos, several videos I plan down the line, comparing them to other speakers that I have that I think are comparable, such as these £150 speakers. I will also be doing comparisons with playing them in stereo, where to me it really comes into its own. However, for those people who just want to hear the speaker, this is my little teaser. do need to point out, most of this video will be about firmware 32.35, which was the first firmware where you can actually embed the EQ settings into the speaker. So update to the latest firmware, you won't have a problem embedding into the speaker the EQ settings. However, just as I went to do this video, having done some other clips already, they came out with another firmware update, 33.35. I had a quick listen, I did a quick measurement, and it does seem flatter. So I will be talking about, in this video about the 3 kilohertz bump, and you can't quite get it flat because there's a lot of dynamic DSP going on that's changing all the time. It's hard to get this frequency just right because playing actual soundtracks is a slightly different frequency response than if you simply just do test tones, more so than any other speaker I've tried. However, in that teaser, it was a different custom setting than I've used on other clips that you will hear. It's a bit more sparkly, it's flatter, it's still a bit harsh, and you might want to dial that back. But just to be fair, it was the flattest I could get doing test tones. I haven't tried it with actual tracks. As I said, it's just a teaser, but I do want to point out slightly different custom settings than elsewhere in this video. When you get your speaker, it will come with a quick start guide. It will come with a little booklet telling you if you're not happy, contact their customer support, in case that never occurred to you to do. You'll also get an auxiliary cable. That's a huge deal because JBL at the moment not even putting an auxiliary in their latest speaker, the Flip 5. So having auxiliary in, let alone a cable to go in it, is a big deal. You also get, of course, the USB-C charging cable. It charges at 5 volts, 2 amps. It's USB-C, that's really, really nice. And you will note, I've got a little white label on one of my speakers because any color you like as long as it's black. Now, this is one of the downsides to me, the speaker. A, that you can only get it in black. So when you get a stereo pair, and by the way, this is one of the problems. If I start up the wrong speaker, I found if I had different EQ settings in 2 different speakers, because I was trying to do a direct comparison, it was resetting the EQ settings if I started up the wrong speaker. So just a thought, if you're going to have a stereo pair and you're thinking EQ settings and the different ones, you're going to want to know which is your main speaker, the one you're starting up, so you don't overwrite the other speaker's EQ settings. So I've done that, and that's the thing. I don't know which is the main one, or I don't know how to differentiate between them because you can only get one color, black. I also don't like the fact it's very hard to see. And by the way, it is a bit dirty. It's an absolute magnet for marking. It's horrendous, and it already had some marks on when I took it out of the box. But it's black. I can't tell the difference between 2 speakers, and it's almost impossible to see the actual little buttons because they're in black as well. Apart from your Bluetooth light will come on in blue or white depending on what mode you've got it in, and your bass light will come on if you've got it in bass up mode. I'm going to get onto that. That's one of the modes. So it's very hard to see the buttons. You've got a multi-function button in the middle. It's like it looks like some sort of musical note. I don't know if that's what it's meant to be. Volume up, volume down either side, and Bluetooth there. And of course on the side, I've got to say it's IPX7, which means you can submerge it into a meter of water for up to 30 minutes if that's what you intend to do. And on the side, the USB-C, the auxiliary in, under a little flap, and your power button. Your power button goes red when it's a low charge, and when it's charging, it's white when it's normal. Now, one of my downsides again to the speaker is I've got no idea what the charging level is. There's no lights that come on to tell me the power level. If you go into the app, there's a small icon that tells you the power level, but it's hard to look at, and it's not something you're going to want to do just because you want to know, does it need charging? So that's a big downside. I have got no idea what the charging level is. I don't even know at what level it goes down to red. Obviously very low charge, but I don't know exactly what level. I had a look at the manual. It didn't actually tell you. So no way to know actual power levels, the actual charge level in your battery. It is a reasonably sized battery, 6,700 milliamp hours, smaller than the one in the Charge 4, although the speaker itself is actually a little bit heavier than both of these speakers, by the way. This is the Denon 250 BT, this is the JBL Charge 4, and as you can see, it's a little bit longer, it's a little bit heavier, but it's 1 kilo, that's just under a kilo, and that's like 750 grams. So it's a 30 watt rated speaker, and it certainly seems to go to what sounds like that sort of level. You got, and what really sets this apart and what this speaker is all about, you've got separate tweeters and they're at wide angles, so they're actually pointing out a little bit. So dedicated tweeters at the top and to the side, pointing out a little bit, gives you a really nice, wide, sharp, well-defined sound. Woofers either side of that. And then passive radiators on the front and on the back. So one pointing forwards, one pointing back, and you've got a little opening there because of the passive radiator. The tweeters are said to be 5 watts, the woofers 10 watts, that gives you 30 watts. There's no NFC with this speaker. If that's a big deal to you, you should know there isn't any NFC. However, I mean, Bluetooth pairing is not rocket science at the end of the day, is it? So, as I'm saying, a lot of this is to do with the app, how you're going to listen to the speaker, especially as it really sounds best and plays louder with the custom EQ settings. Now, the default setting is to come on with this bass light here, and bass corresponds to bass up if you go into the app. And if you turn it off, it goes to bass off. You can't set that to some sort of default EQ setting. So that's really awkward. You may have your custom setting, then you think, oh, I'll go to bass up. You press that, and then, no, I don't want it. I want to go back to my custom EQ. You can't just press that off and go back to custom EQ. It will go to bass off, which sounds pretty horrendous because it literally does that, cuts off the bass. However, I'm talking about the app. I want to give you an overview of the app. So you fire up the app, you select your speaker version, click on that, it searches for your speaker and comes up with the current EQ setting. If you click on those 3 dots on the bottom right, you get the options, which is basically just to change the auto power off from the default 30 minutes to 5, 10, 30 or 60 minutes. This will also be where you update your firmware, and you can disconnect from here as well. It also tells you the firmware version. Clicking on your EQ icon allows you to change the EQ setting. So click on it, you then get the bottom options to forward or backwards to the next selection. Bass up, bass off, voice, classic, original, which is nothing like the original, and your custom settings. So those EQ settings, what do they look like if you're using test tones? So the orange is my custom setting, which I found was my flattest setting. And just to show you what my custom setting is, now I did try several different settings, including pushing the 8 and 12 kilohertz right up because of this constant 3 kilohertz peak in the sound signature, which really you can't get rid of because there is no 3 kilohertz band. It goes 1 to 5 and then 5 to 8. I think they've deliberately avoided that 3 kilohertz band for some reason. And depending on how sharp you want your music, you can play around with settings. But I found this was the flattest setting. You can, of course, push that 12 kilohertz end up and try and get the high end right up. But I found it was still pushing the 3 kilohertz peak up. I didn't get a smoother response. I found trying several different settings, this was about as flat as I could get without it sounding overly harsh and trying to tame that 3 kilohertz peak. So that's my custom setting. That's the one I play with the most. These frequency response measurements were all done playing at 66% volume. So the difference in decibel that you can see here is what you would hear if you went from mode to mode without changing the volume. Custom is by far the loudest setting. It's got the biggest bass. Now the default setting is bass up, the Movi line here. And as you can see, the bass up mode is not actually the heaviest bass mode. That is the heavy mode. So it's a bit misleading. However, what they've done here with the bass up mode, as you can see, they've brought the high end down quite sharply. So relative to the high end, the low end sounds a bit deeper. So it's not actually boosting the high end as such, but it's reducing the high end when you have bass up. If you want the most bass, on the preset equalizing settings, it's going to be the heavy mode, which is also, outside of setting your own custom mode, the flattest mode. As you can see, no matter which mode you're in, you're going to get a big roll off at the end. There is a heavy roll off around the 12,000 kilohertz. You can overcome it a little bit by pushing 12 kilohertz up a little bit more, but it's pushing the 3 kilohertz, which you may or may not like. You do get very sharp and defined vocals. It does sound pretty nice. It's going to be a take it or hate it sort of thing. Other settings, I do not quite understand the point of. Classic, the red line just seems roll off the bass a bit more, don't roll off the highs quite as much as the bass up setting. I'm not sure why that's a classic setting. Even more confusing, the original, you'd think that would be the flattest setting. Actually, original is simply reducing the bass even more drastically and keeping the highs slightly more than the Bass up, not quite as much as the classic. It's not anything like a flat setting as you would expect from original, and it's pretty much unusable, as is the voice setting. If you really just want to push just the bits where the vocals come through, fine. If you don't want any bass and you don't want any high end, I'm not sure why you buy a so-called hi-fi speaker and you only want the vocals without any actually extended frequencies up or down. So the quick overview, the modes on the Soundcore Motion Plus. You're going to have to use custom settings if you want the flattest possible response. You use the heavy mode if you want the preset flattest response. Use bass up if you simply want to reduce some of the highs a bit while keeping some of the bass. I should also point out the biggest difference between using heavy mode or custom mode, in the way that I've got it set custom mode, is how it handles the mids and the high mids. If you use heavy mode, there's a rise from about 700 all the way up to that 3 kilohertz peak with my custom settings, getting the flattest possible response without boosting that 3 kilohertz in any way. I've actually got a little bit of a dip between that same frequency range. So again, that's going to be personal preference. Should bear in mind also there is heavy real-time DSP on this speaker. It does change the exact way the frequency response measurements look when you're using test tones compared to using a real-world track. Even the same track, I can hear the DSP changing a little bit from time to time. So it's very hard to get a consistent sound depending on how close you're listening. I keep stressing if you're using test tones, as I said, because I found the EQ on this really inconsistent. From recording to recording, from setting to setting, it's never quite the same when I go to measure it. There is a lot of dynamic, real-time digital signal processing going on. And in fact, they do mention that in their advertising gumph. They talk about how their DSP, or dynamic bass adjustment or something like that, they call it something else, extends the frequency range. And actually go beyond saying it does magic things. They say something really silly. And they say the frequency response goes from 50 hertz to 40 kilohertz. 40 kilohertz. I mean, that really is crazy, especially as actually, if you measure it in what should be the standard plus or minus 3 decibels, so up 3 decibels or down 3 decibels, so basically you're talking about 6 decibel range, and what's flat, in that range, because anything out of that you're not going to hear because the rest of the frequency range is drowning out. You're really talking about a speaker that goes from 60 hertz to about 13 kilohertz. And actually, in fact, there's a big drop off at the high end. Let alone go to 40 kilohertz, it's not really reaching 20 kilohertz. I mean, I don't know at what level they're measuring that, and maybe, technically they may be correct, but in any real world scenario, that's crazy. There's a massive drop off around 13 kilohertz. It doesn't really extend much higher than that, no matter how you measure it. However, 60 hertz is actually really, this is a £90 speaker. That's pretty decent. Goes pretty low. Wasn't that long ago, anything under 100 hertz was considered, got really good bass. So, we are getting kind of spoiled with a speaker this size, what it can actually do. I mean, it goes lower than 60 hertz, but I'm talking about within what you would call, if you're playing it at, I think its sweet spot, 50% volume, thereabouts, what is within that 6 decibel range is definitely a 60 hertz speaker, which is very, very, very good. It's a few clips just so you can hear the difference between each actual mode itself.
I've been flying from town to town, from London to Taiwan. I've been all around the globe trying to protect. I've been flying from town to town, from London to Taiwan. I've been all around the globe trying to protect. Been flying from town to town, from London to Taiwan. I've been all around the globe trying to protect. Been flying from town to town, from London to Taiwan. I've been all around the globe trying to protect. I've been flying from town to town, from London to Taiwan. I've been all around the globe trying to protect. I've been flying from town to town, from London to Taiwan. I've been all around the globe. to town, from London to Taiwan. I've been all around the globe trying to protect you, flying from town to town, from London to Taiwan. I've been all around the globe trying to protect. I've been flying from town to town, from London to Taiwan. I've been all around the globe trying to protect. I've been flying from town to town, from London to Taiwan. I've been all around the globe trying to protect. Been flying from town to town, from London to Taiwan. I've been all around the globe trying to protect. I've been flying from town to town, from London to Taiwan. I've been all around the globe trying to protect. Been flying from town to town, from London to Taiwan. I've been all around the globe trying to protect.
So yeah, some weird EQ settings on those modes. In the real world, you're just talking about bass up, the default setting, heavy and custom. If you set a decent custom EQ, it will go louder. And it's capable of sounding really, really defined, really, really sharp. It is a really open sound. So, you know, it's not exact stereo. It's kind of a pseudo stereo, but it's not quite digital trickery, as some of them will give you a surround sound type of sound. It's actually just widely dispersed. So you're not going to get a really defined stereo image, but you're going to get what sounds like a very airy soundstage. It's really nice to listen to. It's very open, it's very sharp, it's very well defined. And if you really push those higher EQ settings, as long as you're not using some really bright recordings, those tweeters, you know, they really bring out female vocals. It really brings out sounds you get from snare drums and hi-hats. All those sharp, fast sounds. It really sounds good. So I talk about the sweet spot. Obviously the bass is different depending on the volume you are listening at. This is my measurement of that volume scale. So starting from 6%, actually as you go up the volume scale, initially there isn't much change in the bass frequency response till you get to around the 50% mark. So the sweet spot for bass is, in terms of relative frequency response, is around the 53 to 60%. That's where the bass is strongest compared to the rest of the frequency response. You then start getting a rapid roll off in the bass. 80% is rolling off from like 300 Hertz and continues to do so till at maximum the bass is gone. So all you're left with is this rise to 3 kilohertz. It becomes very sharp, quite harsh. However, there is a sweet spot below the 80%, and especially around 50 to 60%, where it sounds really nice. So, you know, a bit of a drastic reduction after about 73%. And that's the thing, because it's already a sharp, well-defined speaker, you know, with a couple of bumps, even on the new firmware that I was just talking about, that seems a bit flatter, there are still a couple of peaks. In fact, 3 peaks, even with the EQ settings, which I did measure it. You've still got a peak at 3 kilohertz. Then you got a dip between 3 and about 4.5. Then a little peak at 5,000. A little dip, 5.5 to about 9,000. Then the peak, about 10,000-ish. And then the drop off. So there's still some of those peaks, which is going to sound a bit harsh depending on your track and how you're pushing it. And that's the point, because there's a drastic reduction in bass after about 75%. If you're playing at those sort of volume levels, it's going to sound even harsher. That's why my overall custom EQ, I've dialed that high end down a touch, taking into account it's already a, you know, it's not sibilant, it's not terrible, it's not going to hurt your ears, but it's an obvious sharp sound that can sound harsh as the bass comes off at the high volumes. Anyway, I did say this was just going to be an overview of the speaker. To tell you, I really, really like it. I'm not saying it's the greatest thing since sliced bread, but it's kind of like having just a piece of bread and then suddenly you get some jam and butter, and it's that much better. It redefines that £90 level These are comparable speakers and I think sounds a little bit better. I mean, they all have something going for them. I'm not saying, well, you've got to pick that over the others, and that's going to be for a future video. However, it's a lot of fun, I have to say. It's quite accurate, all right, but it's not a perfect speaker, completely flat frequency response, but it still sounds lively, blah, blah, blah. There is that sweet spot around 60%. However, it really comes into its own when you go to stereo pairing. Stereo pairing on the Anker Soundcore Motion Plus is the best I've come across. It's brilliant. It works. Works as it should work. It's the first glitch-free stereo pairing of any speaker that I've personally tried. Now, it's easy to use at every stage. The first thing, obviously, is you're going to turn the speakers on. I'm not going to turn my speakers on because, obviously, I've already got them connected and I don't want to mess about with them. However, you turn them both on for the first time. You simply hold down both Bluetooth buttons. You hold them down for 3 seconds. They'll quickly flash white on the Bluetooth light. They'll suddenly go ding ding. You'll know they're paired and there'll be a solid white, solid blue. And that's it, stereo pairing. It's done. I'll show you how mine work, which are already set up. I'll turn on me first. I'll turn on me second. Boom. That tells me they are now connected in stereo mode. I know that because I've got a white solid light there, a blue solid light here. I can test that with my left-right test.
Left channel, left channel, left channel, right channel, right channel, right channel, left channel, left channel, left channel, right.
Left, right, separation, and it works. It works every time. Not a single glitch. Not only that, they are properly connected. If I turn off either one of them, they're both off. So that's brilliant. I turn on one, I can play just one. I turn on the second one, it automatically connects. Automatically connects in stereo. They're always in stereo mode. Turn off one, they both turn off. It's the way stereo works. It's brilliant. So, having come from the mini rigs, which is, when it works, and it's a 2.2 system, it sounds fantastic, but the pairing is a nightmare. And I know they always say, well, it's something you're doing wrong, it's something like that, but it's great. Mini rigs are great speakers. But even, even JBL and the way they connect, even the Sonys, the way you've got to add the other speakers. But this is just so easy. It's a no-brainer and it works every time. And that's been my first experience with easy stereo pairing. Sounds good in stereo and works every time. And they're properly connected. You turn one off, the others turn off, and you turn them on, they automatically connect. As I said, I'm going to do proper videos on how it sounds in stereo and against the other speakers, blah, blah, blah. I wanted to give an overview. I do like getting into detail of the speaker. I just wanted to get it out of the way. So my takeaway is, out of the box, if you want to use the actual EQ settings in the app, heavy is the flattest. To me, that's going to be your default setting. There's an issue if you use bass up, because when you turn it off, it automatically goes to bass off, and that's a ridiculous mode, as is voice. I mean, I don't know why you'd want to get a speaker like this and then just listen to the part of the frequency range where you just hear voices. I don't get it, but it's there if you really need it. And I have to say, it's slightly inconsistent with its processing. But overall, when I think of what we used to get at this sort of price level, it's a whole different league. And they probably could have priced this at 150 and nobody would have argued, and they've priced it at 90. So long live Anker, and I hope they make something like Extreme 2 size, using the same ideas behind this speaker, because as I can see, they don't have a larger speaker of that ilk. But if that's the value they put into a speaker, then long live Anker. So thank you for watching. UK